he was like an ex-boxer in that movie too, wasn't he, dude? Like he went home with the gold. That's him, dude. Agent Sims, that was his name.
Yeah, Sims.
Sims.
He always wore
Sick.
weird ties.
Yeah. And they were always way too short for him, dude.
Well, this is episode 2 of We Have No Idea What We're Doing.
Yeah.
So,
Episode 2 of just winging it.
yeah, that's what it really should be called. Like
just winging it.
Today on Here Goes Nothing, we got Mike and Gabe.
Oh man, that's like
yeah, man, and that's really what it's gonna be, dude. Like I've accepted
Yeah.
it, so it's gonna be,
Yeah.
you know. So last time we were talking about we were going over relationship, not religion,
right.
right?
Right.
And it feels like it was a while ago, but relationship, not religion. And I know that you and I had just some thoughts and stuff after that. What do you, before getting into anything new, do you have any thoughts like coming off of what we've talked about already? Just where's your mind at right now with this whole like relationship, not religion concept? You know?
I think it's a good course for sure because it's like even just privately, dude. Like we were talking on the phone after the podcast, talking about just all the different things that this specific topic bleeds into. I think like is uncovering that aspect of it. But I think also what's cool is like you and I think we talked about some stuff that was like we have no idea what the heck what this is or what this means or what we should do or whatever. So in a way, it's almost kind of like a training course too, I guess. In a way, like as I hear you speak and as we kind of go back and forth, it's cool, man. But yeah, I think it's a good course. I like the road that we're on, so it's I'm enjoying it for sure.
Yeah. And I just want to remind everybody, anybody who's listening, that like we really enjoy comments. Like we really enjoy more so just comments. Like we had a couple of comments on the last
feedback,
one. The feedback. We really enjoy feedback. We like it. I mean, not so much like for the pat on the back, but we had some comments as far as like, you know, like, oh yeah, I feel that, or no, I understood that, or whatever. And that stuff helps us because it kind of helps us steer the, you know, the direction we're going. But I don't know, man. I was just thinking more about, you know, relationship, not religion, and I just tried to think about like even more so on different levels, like what is this good for, and like what, you know, what is it, what's the purpose of even just talking about this? But I think more and more, it's just the more I think about it, the more I realize like how central it is, you know. And you would think like I think maybe if I was listening to something like this, I would be like, that's kind of obvious, like relationship with God, right? But I just think like what I would like to do is, I think obviously people that go to church, you know, like the church people or whatever, I think they know, even if it's on a surface level, like I should have a relationship with God. Like I should get to know God. But I think just that's what we kind of tapped into the last time we spoke on here was like, why? Like why do I need to know God? Why should I know God? What's important about this relationship? And that's where we started going to how it bleeds in. But I think too is like we get into this space because like we live in the day of like live your own truth, right? Do what you want to do.
What's your conviction?
What makes you feel good? And what's crazy is, and this is probably like a sidebar, what's crazy is like when it comes to God, like it's in the Bible. Like it's in the Word of God. You know what I mean? It's easily verified and fact checked. But I think, believe it or not, and you give me some feedback on this, what I was thinking is I absolutely believe that there is like relationship with God looks like something. Like it has characteristics. It has something. And I think, and like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, I think people don't like to hear that. Like it should look like this. Now, let me balance that out by saying like it's not cookie cutter. Just like I have a different relationship with you than others may have, and our relationship's not identical. But the fruit of that relationship are things like trust, right? Like comfortability. You know what I mean? Little things like that. So I believe so it is with God. And the same thing that, like, with my relationship with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's because we have like a legitimate relationship. I don't, there are things I would prefer not to do to you, you know? I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
hurt your feelings, you know?
Right,
I
right.
don't want to talk poorly about you or anything like that. Or if I had an issue with you, there's a way I would go. You know, there
Yeah,
were just all these kind of unspoken rules and parameters about how to treat
yeah.
somebody that you have relationship with.
Right, right.
And I think it's the same way with
For
God.
sure. Yeah,
And like, don't, do you feel like that people are
yeah,
kind of like, maybe in the church world, maybe not, like there's that person like I I watch this pastor every now and then,
yeah.
and that's my church, and that's this and that, but
Right.
I don't know. Like, am I going off
No,
on
I
that?
think
Am
it's
I?
like, well, because it would be the same. I think people like to serve God according to how they maybe. Well, let me take that back. So when it comes to, I think especially when it comes to believers and maybe those who were once in church and not out of church, I think what they tend to do is they tend to justify whatever it is that they're doing according to how they see God. So like a lot of
Mm,
people, they'll say, I like Jesus the friend, not Jesus the master or Jesus the savior or
mm,
vice versa, however you want to shake it up. And I think when it comes down to it, people tend to forget that God is all of those things, and
mm,
viewing Him and serving Him in all of those categories is essential to it becoming complete.
mm,
It's good to how I have a relationship with you
mm,
as a friend, as a family member, stuff like that, right? Um, but yeah, I think a lot of people get lost, and maybe it's because they listen to different types of pastors or they like different ministries over the others. I like the way they do this. I like the way they do that. So it's kind of like I feel like people almost look at a menu and they kind of build their plate of what they
create
want their
your
faith to
own.
be.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And and
Right.
and that's not what it is.
Yeah.
The Word of God was given to us for a purpose.
Mm,
That, if anything, is our menu that we should be looking over. We should be
mm.
studying, and we should be ordering from that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, like, especially like nowadays, perspectives and like convictions, half of the time people get them based off of a Facebook post
Mm.
or off of a YouTube video. They like something and it's like, oh, I'm gonna live by that. I like that. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
And
right.
and that's not relationship, man.
Yeah.
It's not and it's like what we were saying earlier, that what oh well that's not well, that's your conviction. That's not my conviction. And granted, dude, it's like because I know we've had conversations before too, and it's like, well, what about like the things in the Bible that aren't so clear? How do
Mm.
you dictate whether it's right, wrong, okay, not okay? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's a cop out to you though, because I think a lot of people say, well, it's not in the Bible. So
Yeah.
instead of maybe taking the time to be like, let me pray on it, I
Right.
think that might be the better, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for relationship that bleeds through is like, well, you didn't tell me that it offend, you know what I mean? But maybe if
Right.
I communicated with you, got to know you more,
Yeah.
I might know that, you know?
Yeah. Dude, you just hit like three different things right there. So that, I'm going to try and hit two of them,
Yeah.
I think. So one of the things you just said was, and this is one of those areas where it's like, we're not going to sit here and be like, this is the answer, right?
Right.
This is the way
Right.
to do it. But what you said, I think, is very true, and it might strike a chord with some people,
Hmm.
maybe in the wrong way. But you're right. Like, that's a phrase, I think, and it's in the world. This is like Christianese saying it, like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not my conviction, right? Or I don't
Right.
believe that,
Right.
or whatever. But there is certainly a way to read the Bible, research it,
Yeah.
right? Actually look into it.
Yeah.
And then, like you just said, talk to God about it. Like,
Yeah.
Lord, where are you on this? Where is my conviction on this? Because I
Right.
think sometimes, oh, that's not my conviction. It's a way we use to say, like, I don't feel that.
Yeah.
Well, that's got
Yeah.
nothing to do with conviction. You just don't
Yeah.
like it, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to
Exactly.
hear it.
Yeah.
Like, and that still happens. Like,
Right.
people, like, in fact, I was just talking to Pastor about something the other day, and about kind of like, it was me. I had asked him a couple questions, and kind of about like, when people, I'll just be real. I'll be real with you. It's just us here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just be
That's
real.
it.
I'll just be real with you. It's like get people getting their feelings hurt, like when they hear
Right.
something,
Right.
or something preached, maybe. But the truth is like, I mean, obviously, if it's done the right way under the right context, but by the word of God, the truth is, like, if I open the Bible right now
Mhm.
and I start reading certain passages, there are things that are in there that are going to hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
because I'm a sinner, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And there are things that I've done that are in there it's gonna say don't do, and
Right.
people don't like that anymore.
For
People
sure.
don't want the constructive criticism or the structure
Right.
of how to live, and so that's one thing. I think that's you just said it, a slippery slope to live by.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Especially as a believer,
Yeah, for sure.
because I truly believe stuff like that, it can stunt your growth.
Yeah.
It can absolutely halt. Like, dude, just the same way where if as in our relationship, if I were to tell you, let's say you had to correct me on something,
Yeah.
you saw me do something, you heard me say something,
Yeah.
let's say put someone down, since we're
Right.
talking about relationship, and maybe you pulled me to the side like, hey man, I heard you talking to so and so, dude, I don't know if that was cool, because you feel like we probably have the relationship
Right,
for you to
right.
tell
To
me.
do that, yeah.
I don't feel that was cool. What if I were to tell you, whoa, 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 let me check you there real quick,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not allowed to talk to me about that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, don't
Yeah.
don't give me
Yeah.
that. Let's be here. Let's be cool.
Right.
Let's talk about this and that.
Right.
But when it gets to this area, stay in your lane. I'll
Yeah,
stay in
yeah,
mine.
yeah.
Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
That would put like such a funk, right, on
Right.
our relationship. And then I just became someone who, like, I don't want to hear it. I
Right.
didn't give you a chance. I didn't want any of the negative. I didn't want any of the criticism.
Right.
So I've put a weird strain on
That's
our
good. Yeah.
relationship, right? And then, like, I put a strain on myself because I'm not, or a block rather, because
Right.
I'm not going to grow,
Yeah.
right? I'm not going to learn for a little while longer, hopefully, at some point, or the hard way, that, hey man, there's a way to talk to people.
Yeah.
And you get more with honey than with vinegar. If
Yeah.
you just talk,
Yeah.
calm down.
Yeah.
As opposed to, okay, how many more feelings do I have to hurt?
Right.
To do that. So, and I believe it's the same way with God. Like,
Yeah.
you have to same way you have to let some people in, you certainly have to let God in. And then you said something else there about, like, I think you're right. We base our physical relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of mold a relationship out of that with God, and we get our perspective on that.
Right.
And, like, you rung a bell for me because, like, I'll talk. I'll say this, dude. When I growing up, right, and kind of growing in the Lord, like, I started to learn. First of all, for whatever reason, it's probably something with my life, I learned that, like, God was God. Like, that was my first realization with God. Like,
right.
God is the creator, but God is like this big, like, kind of like daunting figure, and He's been gracious and merciful enough to give us life and give us salvation and all these things,
Right.
which is all true.
Yep.
But it took me a long time ago, and I'll say, even within the last few years, and even more so within the last year, has it become way more apparent to me that God is a father.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
And you hit it. I'll be real with you. Where does that come from? It comes from my own funky relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
I know, I remember there was this worship song that I heard someone sing at this event one time, and it was called Abba Father, right? And there's a part of the song where it says, I love you, Daddy. And I remember hearing those words, dude. I kid you not. It would make me, like, cringe almost. Like, when it's part of the song, I love you, Daddy. I'd be, like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
And at the time, like, I didn't realize, like, I thought it was, like you said, I just don't like that.
Yeah.
That's not me. No, that's not, you
right.
know what I mean? And for me, it took me some years to realize, like, I needed some healing in my own life to be able to see that God was a father. And then it took, which I don't think it needs to be this way for everyone. And I hope it's not, because it took me becoming a parent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have a 2-year-old daughter, you know that? And it took someone telling me, in fact, it was Sister Lisa. She was like, look at your daughter. Like, tell me the feelings you feel like just looking at her. I love her. I want to protect her. She's like, okay, all the things sound like a dad. You want to provide for her. You want to make sure she's safe. You want to make security, blah, blah. And I just want to give her stuff. I want her to have what she wants, what she needs. I want to make her happy.
Yeah.
And she's like, did she do anything to earn that? No, she's 2.
She
doesn't do anything,
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, but you still, and I'm sure she has some kind of bratty moments probably, right?
Yeah.
Maybe throw some fits and temper tantrums. I'm like, for sure. She's 2.
Yeah.
Don't call it terrible twos for nothing.
Yeah.
She's 2.
Right.
And she was like, does that, like, diminish how you feel about her? No. And she's like, now magnify that by like 1 million.
Yeah.
And that's how God looks at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a father.
Mm-hmm.
He loves you as a father does.
Right.
And so in that, like, I realized, I mean, before that, but she just kind of took me deeper on it. That I had some things
Mm-hmm.
to fix, and I had to fix my perspective
Mm.
on God, because it's hard to take something from someone who's like even like a scary figure, like something
Right.
that you're afraid of, and be told, "Hey, don't do this," and you
Mm.
really take it. But
Yeah.
if you have a father who you know cares about you,
Mm.
oh, that's my bad.
Mm.
If you have a father who I hope I don't get in trouble. That's actually pastor.
Yeah.
If you have a father who you know loves you, who cares about you,
Right.
um, it's a little bit easier, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
You know,
for
with
sure.
some maturity, right? Being
Right. Right.
at a place of maturity, it's a little bit easier to be like to accept that,
For
you know,
sure.
to take that.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, that's been my kind of my journey in my relationship
Yeah.
with God. It's only been in like the last year where it's like Father, because something that I would tell Lex, and she would tell me like that's weird, but she has a great relationship with her dad.
Right.
Is that
Right.
she had noticed that when I pray, like whatever I pray for, when we pray for things together,
Yeah.
she noticed like you sound like you sound like a beggar.
Hmm.
You sound like you're begging. You know,
Hmm.
like I would just, that's how I learned to pray. In fact, and I don't think
Wow.
it's necessarily a bad thing, but it revealed the heart around it. Like when I would
Hmm.
pray for certain things, I would leave a back door open, which I think you have to have faith like this. Like, Lord, even if you don't, hey, prepare me. You know,
For sure.
but in my mind, it was like it's gonna sound weird, but in my mind, it was like if you're in the right mood, Lord, if you're
Hmm.
feeling generous enough,
Yeah.
please do this. But if not, that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
you're still God. I still love you. Which, like I said, part of that is okay. The other
Right.
side of it is like you're not realizing that it's not so much that God's not feeling generous, but God has a plan,
Right.
right? God knows what He's doing. God
Yeah.
sees the best for us, wants the best for us.
Right.
And so far as we allow it, that's where He's going to steer us to.
Hmm.
So the way that I had a relationship with God was like fractured in a big way
Hmm.
based on my relationship,
Gotcha.
with other people.
I think one thing, yeah, that's interesting. One thing that comes to mind is like conditional based faith, and I think a lot of times, like, um, and I think a lot of times when people use the word conditions, they kind of use it more like in a maybe not so sensitive manner, like, oh, you got conditions, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, man, is like people's faith gets rocked by loss of loved ones,
Yeah.
by
Oh
not
yeah.
seeing the healing, by a broken family, and not seeing a change, and so I think a lot of times, again, and this all goes back to like I completely acknowledge um, everybody's different lifestyles, everybody's different heartaches or whatever it is they've gone through. It's legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
It's valid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm looking for is valid. But at the end of the day, one thing that God showed me is because the scripture that kind of comes to mind is like is seeking you will find, knocking the door will be open. Well, I think a lot of people treat that when it comes to blessings. That's good. Oh, that's good just for blessings. When it comes to getting a request, that's what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
And God's starting to show me like, nah, man, it's for wisdom too.
Yeah.
It's for understanding. It's
Yeah.
for healing. It's for finding your purpose. And so I think a lot of times people kind of take those conditions and they say like that, and it's hard. I think I don't know if it's like some people are okay with being there, or maybe they just don't know how to get out of that conditional based faith. And the only answer that I know that's worked for me is getting alone with God and praying, getting in His Word. And it
Yeah.
sounds so like cliche, black and white, and it's hard to do. But at the end of the day, like it's a relationship. And if
Mm-hmm.
you want your relation, you want to get something out of your relationship, you got to put some work into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this whole topic that what we're talking about as far as relationship with God, it literally is. That's why I believe like for people, and I don't know, it's just kind of coming to mind, but people who are looking to get with somebody, you're in the dating game or whatever. If you're not ready to change, you don't belong in a relationship. If you're not ready if you're not ready to face the clashing of like, hey, like that's not the way somebody else thinks, and that's what I could learn from that.
Yeah.
That you gotta figure out some more stuff about yourself. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Right.
the cool thing, the difference with well, maybe not the difference, but the thing with God is the same thing. Um, you know, and God's patient with us, man. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, how many times even as believers have we walked away and God's like, hey, man, like, you know the steps, you know that,
Yeah.
like, you want the blessing. It's not going to work by you just being selfish, or it's not going to work by you just being ignorant. Like,
Yeah.
you got to change a few things. You
Right.
know what I mean? And that's the good thing about God is this is like I in my life, I don't deserve anything I have,
Mhm.
but I will say that there were times where God's grace did bleed through. And
Yeah.
even when I wasn't doing right, I still felt God's hand over me, and I
Yeah.
still felt God moving in some ways. And it's in no way saying like, oh yeah, you can still do whatever you want, and God will still throw you a bone every now and then. Like that. That's not how it's. That's not how. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that God loves you so much that there's a such thing as keeping power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And God will let you and make your decisions and let you go. And because at the end of the day, especially for a believer, um, at the end of the day, you know what's right and what's wrong. You
Yeah.
know where the answers are at and where they're not. And so I think when it comes to that type of thing, a lot of people like I always found it hard, man, because like I have a lot of friends and family, and a lot of times, man, like I hear their stories about some of them are still not serving God because of a certain event that transpired,
Mm.
and they can't seem to get past it.
Mm.
And so I don't mean conditional again, like so aggressively. It's I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that there are certain conditions that happen in people's lives that truly um, get in the way of them growing, like you said. And so I think it's hard, man, because it's like, what do you say to those people? You know what I mean? Like, especially
Yeah.
like, because oh, well, God's still good, or
Yeah.
like, well, just keep the faith, man. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to, I I know in my times, and to be honest, man, sometimes it's like, just let me pray for you, dude. Like that's all I can offer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, if you want to be in that place where you know you should be, if you want to be back, if you want peace, you want healing, you want wholeness, and you know where it comes from, it's gonna take work.
Yeah.
It's gonna take shutting off some stuff. It's gonna take you ditching that perspective
Yeah.
over, and sometimes, it's like it's obedience. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
I think that's really good. I think that's huge right there. And that's probably, I would say, a staple when it comes to around to relationship. It's foundational. You
Yeah.
know, it's a pillar. And that you're right. You're absolutely right. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to change. You have to
Yeah.
be willing to bend. You have to be pliable.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be bendable. And I remember, again, just because it pertains to relationship, and we're going somewhere with all this, because
Yeah.
now I think it's easier to relate some of these actual relationships we have with God. And I remember, like, right before I got married, like, my wife and I at the time, I think she was my, I think we had to be engaged by that point, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And something was going on, and I remember I was talking to we were funking a little bit, and I was talking to a friend, and she had told me about this book that she was reading, and one of the things it said was, in a relationship, with your significant other,
Yeah.
what's more important? Is it more important to be right and to
Mm-hmm.
defend something that you did, or is it more important to see that something that you did, although it may not have been intentional, hurt your significant other?
Yeah.
And is it more important to be right, or to, man, you know what, I hurt that person, let me make a change?
Yeah.
But our egos, and I think as males too, certainly I believe for women too, but for males, it's like our egos is like, no, it made sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, it was right. I did it. And
Yeah.
like, dude, we will stand by those things. Like, we won't
Yeah.
budge. Like, we'll
Yeah.
stick with it, like, down to the ground. Like, no, like, you don't see that. You don't see how you don't see how you were wrong.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't see it, I'm sorry. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And we could absolutely be that way with God,
For sure.
not wanting to budge. Like, what I did, we're real good at justifying
Yeah.
ourselves. We're real good at justifying, like, what we did. And I think that's huge in relationship. And I think that sometimes the reason that people don't get what they the reason that people don't get what they should, or see what they should out of relationship with God, is because it's exactly like you just said. Something that is required is surrender.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to let go. And it's different from any other relationship because the benefits are so much higher and the cost, to a degree, I'll say cost loosely, is so much higher.
Yeah.
Because when you first meet someone, it's almost never happens that immediately you're just like, boom, here I am.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
here's
exactly.
all of me.
Yeah.
Here's everything.
Right.
Here's my insecurity, my fear, everything.
Yeah.
Like, here I am, and I'm just open.
Right.
For some people, I truly believe like God just hits them in such a way that it's like, okay, here was my life before, and then
Yeah.
here's my life after you.
Right.
Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I think for me, like, I grew up in the church, so I saw these things. Like, I've been around these things. I've seen like God move in different ways. So I think for me, like, it's was a little more difficult for me,
Yeah.
you know, in a way, because I don't know, that surrender just wasn't always there. And even to this day, I battle with myself, you
Yeah.
know. And you're absolutely right. You have to be willing to change. You
Yeah.
have to be willing to bend. And um, I just think that it's a staple, like in any relationship. You
Right.
know, it's a requirement. And I think when it comes to God, like when it comes to knowing God, when it comes to like I just said a moment ago, like we can just be so much like, I'm not going there,
Right.
and I'm not touching that.
Yep.
And like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like if you come, like, I mean, God's grace is still with you. It's not like, because I think people think, oh, it's either in or out.
Mm-hmm.
It's either my way or the highway. Well, I wouldn't want to be with anybody like that. So, but it's different. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
For
such a
sure.
different thing, and like something that kind of something that kind of hurts me. It bothers me, not because I'm like, man, that's the wrong way to do it, but more so it's because like, man, you don't know how much you're missing. Is when I find people who have known God,
Mm.
they've had experience with God, but that experience is limited to coming to church. You
Mm.
know, and because more so the morality lines up with your moral beliefs.
Right.
You know, the kind of moral foundation of Christianity or the Bible lines up with your moral values. And so this is good. And then mix that into the pot with a little bit of a feel good sermon, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
or a come to Jesus moment where, you know, God came through for you or something like that. And it stops there.
Right.
And then for whatever reason, like church church folk are real good at like, okay, well, I'll come Sunday and Wednesday from
Mm.
now on, and I'll be at this or that. But you come, like, you fulfill your obligation, you check the box,
Right.
and then that's it, you know. And then you go home, and you might, like you said, see a post, you might hear a little
Yeah.
something, you might listen to a worship song here or there, and that's it. There's such a clear border
Right.
of how far God can go, like to the point where like we like it's just so limiting.
Yeah.
You know, it's so limiting. And so like coming back full circle to the relationship and what it looks like something that is for certain is that if you are putting work into that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right, you see fruits of it, right?
Right.
Trust is built up, like different things begin to build up. And I think like we just have to be super careful with drawing that line. You
For
know what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah.
It's how do we get around that? How do we get around drawing that line? How do we, how can people be encouraged, you
Mm.
know, to to let go, you
Yeah.
know, to give this relationship, the relationship, a chance, you
Yeah.
know, because
Yeah.
like, dude, we haven't even gotten into religion. You know what I
Right.
mean? I
Right.
think by this one, we were starting to talk about like religion and what that means to you and I at this level,
Right.
not on this
Right.
big global scale or, you know, this big, even theologically, but what religion looks like to us and where this relationship fits in.
Yeah.
But I think we found that relationship with God is so deep,
Yeah.
you know, that
Extremely. Yeah.
yeah, we haven't even got to that part yet. So like,
Right.
I'm still thinking about, you know, how do we get around these hurdles? Because I'll tell you this, man, like there are things about myself that like I'm unhappy with.
Yeah.
You know, there are things about myself like I and maybe it's just me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but there are things about myself like I battle with all the time.
Yeah.
Like I should have did this. I should have said that. And that way I think I'm an overthinker. Like sometimes I don't think enough,
Yeah.
you know, but in
Yeah.
other ways like I'm constantly like after interactions with people
Yeah.
or something I said or a conversation or whatever, I'm just that way. I overanalyze them for whatever
Mm.
reason. I should have said this. I should have did that. I wish I was more this way. Sometimes I feel like I need to be more assertive and more like, of a have more of a presence, and other times I feel like, oh, let me be real nice and gentle. And then
Right.
it's like, wait, neither of those are me. Like, where's the middle?
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And the only peace I've ever had in regards to like, and I guess all that's identity, because all that stuff is like nonstop in my mind.
Mm.
Like there's there's who I am right now,
Yeah.
and then there's who I want to be, and then there's who I believe I should be in Christ, right?
Right.
As a believer, as someone who follows God, and there's a big gap between all three of those things,
Mm.
and certainly a ways for me to go from here to there,
Mm.
and in that search, like it's been in the presence of God. And what I mean by in the presence of God is times where I've done exactly what you said a little bit ago is, you know what, let me give this a shot.
Yeah.
I don't even back to like I don't know how to pray, but I'm gonna
Mm.
sit here and pray.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna turn some worship music on and I'm just gonna seek you, God. And it wasn't like reading a scripture and Lord and reciting scripture, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for
Yeah.
me, learning to pray, I just said, God, like I need you. Like before
Mm.
it ever came to this formula or of how to pray, God, I need you. Like here's where I am in my
Right.
life. Like here's like what I'm unhappy with. Here's what I don't like. Like I just need help. And it came from like a real place.
Mm.
And it was in those times that like I started to feel God. And you know what? The truth is that it's not that I started to feel God like change me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't feel all of a sudden like, oh, I'm better now. And I'm
Yeah.
becoming who
Yeah.
I should be. And I'm
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm ascending. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
evolving. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, you remember those Pokemon, dude? Like back in
Yeah.
the day, they used to go
Yeah. From
at
level
a
to
certain,
level,
yeah,
dude.
there were levels
Yeah.
of them. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
here I've arrived
I'm
and
at
I'm on
stage
the yeah,
three. Yeah.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
I'm level 2, Mike. Now
Yeah.
it wasn't that at all.
Right.
You know what it was like?
Yeah.
I started to feel comfort.
Mm.
Like I started to feel like it's okay.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Like I remember, like I went to this church service, and it was at a time. Like I said, mind you, I'd grown up in church. I
Mm.
was what you call like a pew
Right.
baby,
Yeah.
right? I grew up in church. I was familiar with church, and I remember around like 18, 19, I had just like stopped doing all that, and I was just kind
Mm.
of doing my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't step in foot into a church for maybe almost a year,
Mm.
And I remember at one point I had some friends, which thank God for them now. They were trying to drag me to church, and I was like, oh, man, I don't want to go, man. And the truth is I wasn't going to church not because God did something to me, but because I started living for myself, things that I
Mm.
knew weren't right. But it wasn't even that; it was how it made me feel, and I
Gotcha.
just felt like a failure. I just felt
Mm.
like I felt heavy,
Wow.
and it's just how I felt. And I felt like at that point, like church wasn't home anymore. People might say, "Oh,
Mm.
people make you feel like that. Religion makes you feel like that." No, man, that is my conviction.
Yeah.
That was conviction, dude.
Yeah.
That wasn't like, "Oh, stop, I'm not going to church." It was me.
Yeah.
Just let's dumb it down a little bit more. I felt bad. I
Mm.
felt bad about what I was doing because I had had a real experience with God. I knew God was real,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to take that away from me.
Mm.
I know God's real.
Right.
I will sit and tell you how it happened. You might not understand, you might not get it, but I had my experience with God.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
there's that, right? And so I felt bad. Now I know it's because I was hurting the person in that relationship,
Mm.
God, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, they drag me to church, and I go to church, and the worship starts, right? And almost immediately, like I'm not ashamed to say it anymore.
Mm.
Almost immediately, waterworks, dude.
Yeah.
Somebody like turned on the faucet and then broke the handle off, dude. And it was just
Yeah.
gushing tears, dude.
Yeah.
I could not stop. I was gross. I was dirty. And I know that sounds like cliche. Everybody's got like a testimony like that, but it's
Yeah.
the truth.
Mm.
And it's because I just felt like I was like, I just felt like
Yeah.
I was the lowest. And you know what I felt like? I felt God like speak to me in that moment. Again,
Mm.
sounds cliche, but I'm dead serious. This is just what happened. And I just felt God like tell me, it's okay.
Mm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I see you where you are. I see you right there. I see what you're doing, what you've done,
Mm.
why you feel what you feel. And you know what I felt, dude? accepted.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
this
that's
is
good.
crazy
Yeah.
because this is such a foreign concept to people. Like, oh, God's just a rule book, and if I don't follow,
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. And in that moment, I didn't feel like condemnation. You like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna burn in hell if you don't change.
Right.
No, is that a true fact? Biblically, yeah.
Yeah.
Had I died in my sin, yeah.
Yeah.
But in that moment, that is not what God was telling
Right.
me. It was the comfort, and now I know today of a father telling me it's okay. It's the prodigal son.
Yeah.
He
Story.
went
Yeah. We
he
came
went
back.
and did
Yeah.
his thing. What it says, the father came out to him. He
Yeah.
met him out there. God came out to me
Hmm.
that day
Yeah.
and was like, I see you. That kid had to be filthy, right? The
Yeah.
kid had to be, he had had life smacked him in the mouth a couple times,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
He was eating
Yeah.
with pigs. He had to be a mess, dude. He stunk.
Yeah.
He had to come home looking like trash,
Right.
right? And he runs out to him. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Oh, hold on. Let me hose you down first. You
Yeah.
stink. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
He came out to him. He embraced him.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt that day, man.
Hmm.
That God was just like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I see you. Now within me, I felt like you got to change.
Yeah.
You need to change.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's just going to perpetuate.
For sure.
You would do that anyway in any other scenario.
Yeah.
Like that's the definition of insanity. Okay, this isn't working. I got to try something different.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Your way's not working. Let's try a different way.
Right.
And that's what God showed me. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. I see where you are. I love you. And the next thing that I truly believe God was telling me was like, I can help you out of that hole.
Yeah.
There was no threat, dude.
Hmm.
It's like I was in a place where I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
God, I felt God. I know in my heart, dude, that God was like, I can help you out.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Hmm.
I can help you out. I'm here. And
Yeah.
I just felt for the first time like, dude, what better picture of love?
Hmm.
What better picture
Yeah.
of love? Like it's hard to love like that.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And that's the relationship
Right.
that we're talking about. That's the relationship that I want people to at least give an attempt at.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't care if it's like someone who's been in church, they're not in church anymore. I don't care if it's someone who has never been to church, never heard of God,
Hmm.
or someone who's in church, because I think all three of those categories fall into the same category of there's a line here.
Right. For sure.
But I just want that relationship to be understood, like what it does to you,
Yeah.
what it does for you, and it's not as rigid as people think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like those hurdles too, man, like you were talking kind of early on, I think the biggest, maybe the most common hurdles that I think people face to getting over that hump or over that line, I think the biggest hurdles, man, is inconvenience and uncomfortability.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of it is like, I think especially when it comes to like relationship, um, I think anybody like in especially like in a marriage, sometimes marriage is uncomfortable, and it's definitely can be an inconvenience at times. I think a lot of, and what I mean by that is like, especially when it comes to the area of being flexible or compromising with the other, with your spouse. Um, and it's funny, man, because like for me, my wife, like she knows this, and like my family, they know this. When it comes to like cleaning something, dude, like if we're moving a house or something, for me, I'm like, you know what, just throw everything away. Let's just start fresh. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to
right.
box it. I don't want to sort. I don't want to
Burn it all.
go through it. And the same thing if like, the closet needs to be empty. I'm like, hey, give me a trash can. Just throw everything in the trash can. I don't care what. I don't got time to sort.
Right.
And I think like a lot of times we treat our lives like that. A lot of times it's like, God will always pull you out of the hole, but hey, man, you're gonna have to dig through some stuff.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to reach through some messes, to
Yeah.
get out. And I think at times that's the uncomfortability and the inconvenience that keeps people where they're at, and what keeps people living in yesterday's miracle. And I remember like a lot of times, like I would catch myself talking about the days of old, like when I was a teenager, man, I saw these signs and miracles and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, God told me, like, what have you seen lately?
Mm.
What have you been pursuing lately? Like, you're still living off of that miracle from years ago.
Yeah.
You haven't been connected with me because I got new miracles I want to do. I got new healings I want to, put you through.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of times it's the inconvenience and the uncomfortability of, well, I don't really want to deal with my anger. I don't really want to deal with, whether it's jealousy or whether it's lack of confidence. And those are things that are really hard to push through. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
like, I think just when it comes down to it, what I love about the story of the prodigal son is that I know that dude had to come back messed up, and I
Yeah.
don't mean just inside, I mean outside too. The cool thing about it, man, is that the father still recognized his son,
Yeah.
even in the even with the mess, you know. And it's the same thing with God. And I kind of direct this more towards the backslider. You know, I think a lot of backsliders who are away, they feel that, you know, well, man, I just done too much, or I'm so messed up. Or maybe it's even like I don't want to deal with, you know, with the altar call part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hang back here, and I'll get right in these areas. I'll get back to praying. I'll get back to, you know, watching a YouTube sermon or something like that. But but they got to understand, man. Like, God recognized you, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you still have value and you still have importance no matter what you've done. And a lot of times people can't get past certain hurts. People can't, they live in it. and
Yeah.
and I think it's a sad thing, man. And it's miserable, and it's so it's so exhausting to live a life when, especially for, when you're just constantly pointing the finger, whether it's at other people or yourself. At some point, I remember that's how I used to be.
Mm.
um and I think same thing. It sounds super dramatic, but it's true. I remember, I remember being at a park, like, just, I mean, literally asking, like, God, where the heck are you, man? How did I get this far from you? And you have your moment where you snap out of it, and those are great. But in order to get to those new miracles, in order to get to those new stages, there will always be uncomfortability, and there will always be an inconvenience.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, as humans, we want what we want, and sometimes we think we know better than God does. And but understanding that it was an inconvenience for Christ to go to the cross.
Mhm.
And it's crazy. Like, this is something God showed me, is there were people in that moment sinning simultaneously while Christ is carrying the cross for them,
Mhm.
not knowing it. And I think a lot of times, like, as believers, we forget that. Like, it was uncomfortable. Even Jesus was like, God, like, oh, I'm paraphrasing, but even Jesus was like, hey, dude, like, if I don't got to do this, can you, like, let's make it past then,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
because I don't want to go through this. But at the end of the day, he said, but your will be done.
Yeah.
Like, it's what you're calling me to do. And so,
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of times people, especially when it comes to relationship, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your spouse. It's the same thing with, you know, uh, kids. If it's inconvenient and if it's uncomfortable, that means a miracle is waiting on the other side of it. You just got to get through that hump, man. And the cool thing about it is, like, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the biggest thing, is like, a lot of people, they and I'm guilty of this, dude. Like, at times I feel like I have to carry the world on my back.
Mhm.
I have to carry the burden because nobody else can do it, because I'm super strong and I got good stamina and all the different stuff. But man, it is so much better when you have an understanding of, there's a God and a Father that loves me, that wants to help me, that wants to protect me, that
Yeah.
is cheering for me to get through
Yeah.
this. But even I think when you find, again, back to relationship, even when you find that camaraderie amongst other believers, man, like,
Mhm.
we're all going through something.
Yeah.
We're all carrying a weight or a chip on our shoulder and stuff like that. It, but we have to get to a point to where, like, we understand, like, it's not about me, man. It's not about us. It's about getting through. It's about serving a bigger purpose. And I think, like, a lot of times for people in relationship, like, I'm sure, like, for you, I know, how many of those things, to get out of your hole, how many of those things were uncomfortable for you had to address?
Yeah.
Maybe it was having certain conversations with certain people that you really weren't planning on maybe ever having,
Right.
right?
Yeah. For sure.
But at the same time, it's like, if there's no uncomfortability or inconvenience, you have to start asking yourself, am I hitting the right targets? Is there something that I'm missing? God, show me what I'm not seeing. Because I feel like that always lines up with a miracle,
Yeah.
is an uncomfortability and an inconvenience.
It's so interesting because it's a sad thing. Like I said, not because like those poor people, but because of what they're missing out on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to like so many people who, and it's gonna get, this is the religion side of it to a
Right.
degree. This is the church side of it. But I've talked to so many people who have maybe been in church,
Yeah.
and that sermon comes around, that the Lord just orchestrated, and for whatever reason on this day that you're there in church, the preacher decides to preach, or what I think led by the Spirit to
Mm-hmm.
preach something that is hitting home for you.
Yeah.
And it's one of those hitters, man.
Yeah.
Those messages that are just every point, checking every box of what you're going through.
Right.
Um, and there are people, and I think it's common, who it's hitting home, like you feel it. And maybe moved to brokenness, where God, you begin to break because now God is speaking to you.
Right.
Um, and when it comes time to respond, you don't want to respond for fear of the tears.
Mm.
You don't want to break. You don't want to look bad. You don't want to look like you don't have it all together. You just don't want to. You don't want to cry. You
Right.
don't want to feel the brokenness. And as someone who has just come through that, it's hard. It's exactly like what you said. It's uncomfortable. It is ugly. Somebody might think something sideways about you. Who cares? Like, I'm something that I and again, it's a weird thing. Something that I felt that I used to have to do for sure, and I definitely feel less of it now. Is I used to feel for the longest time, and maybe a lot of people do. Maybe I'm not breaking ground here. I used to like want feel for the longest time like I had to look like I had it all together.
Mm.
Like I had to look like things are going well, like
Right.
things are going great, or like even though things are crazy, I got it under control.
Yeah.
And the truth is like I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a human condition or what, but like
Mm.
there's I'm not like, and if I know, now don't get me wrong, like for the stranger who's walking by me is like, hey man, how's it going? I'm not gonna look at it. It's terrible,
Yeah.
I'm falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't feel anymore like
Yeah.
I need to, what I mean?
For
I
sure.
need to look like that because it's not real.
Right.
Who's got it all together?
Yeah.
Who knows all that? And so the fear of not wanting to break or be broken, in that way,
Mm.
it, I'll be honest, and I'm not trying to sound like cold here or anything. At this stage in my life, like it doesn't make sense to me.
Mm.
It's not something that it makes sense to me easily, because like God is so clearly trying to get a hold of you.
Right.
He's so clearly trying to do something in you. And at this stage in my life, like not that I wasn't there before, but now having come through it's way more scary to me now to know that Jesus himself be knocking at the door of my heart,
Mm.
and me be on the other side of that door,
Yeah.
like hiding under the table.
Nobody's home.
Yeah, nobody's home. We're not here.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's weird, and I think that's more for like the believer. And I think just like with any relationship, like you have to go get it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have to put yourself out there a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit. Like
Okay.
no matter what, like putting yourself out there to get a relationship nowadays might look,
Right.
nowadays, because it's not as interpersonal.
Yeah.
But still, like, I mean, I don't mean to date myself here. I'm not that old. But I don't mean
Yeah,
to date
you're
myself.
not,
But dude, I remember like when I was in school, like people still passed notes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
saying it had the check yes or no
Yeah.
box, but people
Yeah,
still
yeah.
passed notes. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like or whatever. To ask someone out or something like that.
Right.
Like it was still done like that. Now,
Yeah.
like from the comfort of your home, you're like strategically liking pictures.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or don't like too many.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
like or
yeah.
whatever. Or
Yeah.
making a comment, or should I send that DM or that
Right.
shoot that text message off? Like it's way less interpersonal. But the point is either way, you still gotta take the shot.
Yeah, for sure.
You still gotta pull the trigger somehow.
Yeah.
And it's still the same way, like with God, you have to put yourself out there,
Yeah.
and that never ends.
You're right.
Like we're going on. My wife and I are only going on our like 4th year of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I still have to put myself out there.
Yeah.
I still have to be vulnerable. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And I'm sure that doesn't change.
Right.
Like you still have to be available
For sure.
to be challenged,
Yes.
right? To have something critiqued or
Right.
constructively criticized, if you want to say. But like those are all necessary anyway. And I think like the danger is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like so many people, believer, non-believer, whatever. I feel like so many people just get comfortable,
Oh
and
yeah,
like
definitely.
this is what life is.
Mm-hmm.
This is what life looks like, and like I'm not trying to go another way with this, but like this is just how much money I'm gonna make, and
Yeah.
this is just what I'm gonna do, and this is just how I'm like
Mm,
how it's gonna be, and like I have no power of it, and as long as I just do these little things, and it's like those kinds of mindsets I think can be like they can be tricky because
for sure.
you can get stuck, you know, and it work. It's the same with God, you
Yeah,
know, and I just
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like we have so much further to go. So I think that's talking about relationship. We talked about today, like, which is good. I think some things that hold you back from that relationship,
Mm,
and something that like I'm gonna think about, and like I hope other people think about, like, and maybe comment on, and maybe like endeavor to check it out yourself, like investigate that within yourself. Have your relationships or your broken relationships with whomever, whenever, how has that shaped your perception of God?
mm,
You know,
that's good.
and
Yeah.
where are you getting your perception of God?
Right.
Where are you getting your thoughts about what relationship should look like? Because mine comes from experience,
Mm-hmm.
it comes from the Word of God, and it comes from discipleship.
Right.
You know, I I have to bug my pastor every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how does this look like? Why? Because this is the man who's currently
Right.
dedicating his life to this, and I want to learn from him. But like I said,
Yes.
I read the Bible, right, and then like you said, I search God myself.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you? You know, where meaning whoever's following along with us. I'm interested to know where people get their perception of
For
God,
sure.
or is your answer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in church, and
Yeah.
I know about God. Do
Right.
you? Because like it took some time. It still takes work.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no you cannot just do the be comfortable with the status quo. So
Right.
I'm interested in where people get their perception of God, and I think like what we're going to be talking about next is so what does that relationship look like? Like
Mm.
we just talked about all the things that it takes
Yeah.
to have those relationships, which again, it's not groundbreaking. Those are
Right.
the things that it takes, but there's fruit of a good
For sure.
relationship. Like we said, there are
Yep.
things that come out of a healthy relationship. It's super obvious. Somebody who has a good relationship, they're just tight, right?
Yeah.
Um, like not all the cute stuff, like oh, we finish each other's sentences, but
Yeah.
like like there are just
Yeah.
things like you're on the
Yeah.
same page. You may
Right.
not agree all the time, right? But
Right.
you're on the same page, and then you can tell, man, when somebody's relationship is just like
It's off.
funky, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
something like so I think there are fruits of that, and I think
Mhm.
that's probably
Yeah.
something that we could talk about later. And like as always, like this is stuff that we're just talking about.
Yeah.
There was plenty of stuff in here today that we didn't have the answer to. We're
Yeah.
just talking about, and there are some things I feel like we touched that like people don't want to hear. You
Yeah.
know, people. It's a little bit controversial, and
Yeah.
it's we're not here to like preach to anyone, but these
Right.
are things that we think about.
For
These are
sure.
things that we
Oh
talk
yeah.
about.
A
One
lot.
thing's for
Yeah.
certain, I think that we agree on, is relationship with God looks like something.
Definitely.
You definitely have to give it a try.
Yep.
You definitely have to give it a chance. If you're not doing the things that you need to do, just like in any other relationship, don't expect to see the fruit of it, right?
Exactly.
You're not going to get it.
Exactly.
But I think we agree that relationship with God does look like something.
For sure.
And I think we have to get out of it. And if you do make that step and you are willing to give God the opportunity, to have a relationship with Him, I think you have to explore the
Yeah.
mindset, the attitude of like, okay, I have to do something,
For sure.
and I have to actively do something, just like any other real relationship, or it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to get stale,
Yep.
and it's going to die. So that'll be the next one I
Awesome.
think we talk about. Real quick, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot. Did
You're
you
good.
have questions or anything like that that we had talked about before?
Um,
Do they apply to this, or is it
it's a little different. Maybe
okay?
in the next one, but
Maybe next one. Okay.
but I do know, like, as we're talking too. I mean, for people that are like, hey man, if you know, anybody heard us talk about something and maybe it just sounds like we don't know,
Mhm.
if you got the answer, man, share it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
if
yeah.
there's something
Or thought, yeah, for
that's worked
sure.
for you or something that hasn't worked for you, like
Yeah,
I think the purpose of all this too is like, you know, we're all in the same boat,
yeah,
and this boat is like we're trying to make it, man. Like, not even just make it. Let me take that back. Like, we want to thrive.
yeah,
We want to thrive in Christianity, and one thing that doesn't work is like, you know, well, this is my model, that's your model, this is your model. Like,
mhm,
okay, well, let me take, your a piece of yours and a piece of yours and apply it to mine. Like,
Yeah.
this like this isn't like an all you can eat thing. Like with God, it's a very strategic. It's a very specific rather course you have to maintain and
Yeah.
follow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And it gets hard and it gets tricky, just like any other relationship. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and I think it's like, like closing that, and I don't mean to kind of like ramble back on and bring it back up. I think, but just like really quick, like I think when it comes um to relationships, man, like I know for me, dude, like um getting married, it was hands down the biggest leap of faith, and but I could say too, man, like it's so rewarding, even like in the smallest um like hills, when it comes to like battles, and just like kind of like for an example, even just to go out and say like, hey, I'm sorry, when you kind of feel like I don't need to, but I'm gonna do it anyway because at the end,
So hard.
yeah, it's so hard, you know what I mean? And I my heart goes out to those who have that, even maybe like with those types of humps with God, somebody that's not, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like this, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, and so, but like that, sometimes again, just battle through the inconvenience, battle through the
Yeah.
uncomfortability, because at the end of the day, God's always faithful, man.
Yeah.
Like God always comes through for you. And
Mm-hmm.
but I noticed even like in my marriage, man, like it's sometimes those little victories, like it means something, like when sometimes when I'm feeling a certain way, like with with my wife, and it's like, well, I don't want to apologize because I know like this, and like I analyze the conversation over and over and over in my head, and it's like, no, like I'm right. But at the end of the day, man, like it's not. I would rather be good with my wife than be able to stand on, be like, oh yeah, I'm right. Because what does that do for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a selfish thing.
Yeah.
Um, but so I guess I guess the reason why I say that is, appreciate the little victories, because it goes a long way,
Yeah.
and it continues to unfold the bigger landscape, the bigger picture of what God's trying to show you,
Yeah.
where God's trying to take you.
Right.
So don't take them for granted,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, like, oh, I don't need to address that because it's not that big of a deal, or
Mm-hmm.
it's not that serious. um, Bring it up before God and let Him decide if it is or
Yeah.
not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, it's an uncomfortable thing, but the more that you keep putting yourself out there, to willingness to be flexible,
Mhm.
can go a long way.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I think that's I think that that's really good. And I think just so people know, as we close it down for the day,
Mm,
just so people know, like you and I are on this journey together.
yeah. Yeah.
And what's cool is we've talked about stuff before, and like we've
Hmm.
shared in like failures, successes with each
Yeah.
other, and we've discussed some of these things for real. And so I think that's all you and I are trying to do.
Yeah.
I think I would hope that everybody's intention is to become better in
For
some
sure.
way, to get better. And you and I just happen to really believe that having God at the center of all that just changes everything. And
Definitely.
so I just want to invite people with us,
Yeah.
to do this, to do what we're doing, and to be a part of the conversation. And
Right.
I think we just hope to be helpful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think, like I said, we're not preaching here.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
even have like you know nothing to give in that regard. We're just talking about some of these things, and
For
I
sure.
think we're gonna start coming into some more issues on the next one. Some
Yeah.
questions about things like, I don't know, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully people come with us for this, and they join in, and hopefully some other folks hear it, and it's helpful. But other than that, I
Yeah.
think we're all set, dude.
That's it, man. Yeah, it's
All
been
right, man.
good, dude.
All right. Well,